deserve to be paid for every hour that it is streamed online.
I'm so grateful for the things that I'm able to do.
I deserve to be paid for every hour that it is streamed online.
In what's quickly becoming one of the most bizarre chapters of her already chaotic Hollywood journey, Rachel Zegler has now found herself in the middle of yet another PR firestorm. And this time, it all unfolded on her own Instagram account. Just when people thought her career couldn't spiral any further, she took to social media to vent, lash out, and ultimately push away what was left of her shrinking fan base, all because her live show Evita wasn't selling tickets. Let's rewind the clock. Rachel had been banking hard on Evita as her grand theatrical comeback. After a string of movie controversies, from dismissing Snow White to alienating her supporters, she pivoted back to her stage roots in hopes of reigniting her career. On paper, the plan made sense. She had the voice, the resume, and the prestige of the London Palladium. But what she didn't have anymore? Public support.
I mean, you know, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird.
Super weird.
So we didn't do that this time.
So no Prince, or a different kind of Prince?
We have a different approach to what I'm sure a lot of people will assume is a love story just because, like, we cast a guy in the movie.
Tickets that were once priced at a premium began dropping.
I don't need your business.
$500 opening night seats slashed. Within weeks, the production was offering discounts. Then ticket prices entered pay-what-you-can territory. Some nights were even free. Theaters that once sold out were now offering entire rows for next to nothing. And to Rachel, that wasn't just a professional setback, it was personal. So she did what any level-headed star would do, right? She took a moment of reflection, regrouped with her team, and worked on outreach. Nope. Instead, Rachel went live on Instagram, and things got messy fast. Within seconds, it was clear this wasn't going to be your average Q&A or feel-good behind-the-scenes update. Rachel, visibly irritated and visibly defensive, launched into what can only be described as a frustrated monologue directed squarely at the public. She didn't thank the fans who showed up. She didn't express gratitude to the theater community. She went after the ones who didn't come. If you say you support women in the arts and then don't show up for Evita, what are you really doing? She said, shaking her head. It didn't stop there. Y'all will post quotes about empowerment and then leave my show half empty? I see it. I'm not dumb. The tone was combative, accusatory. And for someone who had been trying to repair her public image, it was a complete disaster.
Difficult question. Scar. Love Scar, because that's like some pure evil. Like, he really, really kills that guy. He kills Mufasa. That's crazy. Claude Frollo from Hunchback of Notre Dame, because it's really nasty, because it's about, like, very real things. And then Hades from Hercules. I have to pretend like, oh, God, well, crazy that we're in front of this.
Wait, how often are you in line for the Snow White ride?
I'm a narcissist. I don't know. It's always like my publicist Ashton was with me the last time it happened, and I was like, God, I hope no one, because every time they come up to me, I'm always online for this frickin' ride. Jeff and Amy were reading lines, and then our director Mark Webb on Zoom was like, you know, and then Dopey's gonna look at you and whistle, and I took a pause and realized what I was auditioning for, and then it became like, I will elbow everyone out of the way to play the part. But it was very sweet, and it was a very short audition process for me.
Everyone on West Side Story has so much stuff. Ariana DeBose has like a poster from the set. I have nothing.
That's amazing.
I have nothing.
You have
from my
memories.
first movie. I do.
And
I have memories. I got a boyfriend out of it. Like,
That's a lot.
You got the boyfriend.
You took something from the set.
I got a boyfriend. I got a best friend.
Yeah.
Focused on becoming the leader that her father tells her that she can be, and she's really trying to find the courage to stand up to the evil queen and how to find her own agency and rule a kingdom. And she meets so many incredible people along the way, and maybe she finds love, maybe she finds friendship, but really what's important is that she finds her own voice. I think I watched it once and then I never picked it up again. Like, I'm being so serious. I watched it once and then I went on the ride in Disney World, which was called Snow White's Scary Adventures. Doesn't sound like something a little kid would like. Was terrified of it. Never revisited Snow White again. So I watched it for the first time in probably 16, 17 years.
And singing all week, how is Snow White going? You're starring in Snow White, the new version. How's it going?
It's going really, really well. We're having so much fun on set. It's so magical. And every day I'm just pinching myself that I'm a freaking Disney princess. It's so stupid. Fun fact, I didn't get to watch it. I didn't see it. I have no idea what everybody was reacting to, but I saw the logo and I got really emotional. I also heard everybody like screaming and I got really excited, which means they must have liked it. But I know how I felt making it, and so hearing everybody's reception of it being so excited and screaming and cheering is so, it just fills your heart with such gratitude. Really, it does.
Joe Rogan even talked about the live stream on his podcast the next day. She basically guilt-tripped the internet, he said, and you know how well that works. Nothing gets people to spend money like being scolded. Rachel's Instagram rant continued for nearly 20 minutes, and it only got worse as it went on. She began calling out critics, referencing headlines, and blaming cultural apathy for the low turnout. She insisted that the world wasn't ready for strong female leads who challenged tradition, as if her poorly attended performance was a reflection of society's flaws rather than her own public behavior. What really stunned viewers was the part where she started listing excuses people had made for not attending. "I don't live in London," she read mockingly. "Okay, book a flight, make it happen." That clip went viral immediately. People were floored. Did she really just tell her mostly American audience to book international travel to watch her sing in a show that was practically giving away tickets? Yes, she did. The backlash was instant. Comments poured in. Some viewers tried to reason with her, suggesting better marketing or outreach. Others flat out logged off in frustration. What was supposed to be a moment to connect with her audience turned into a full-blown meltdown that once again positioned Rachel as the villain of her own story. And as always, she doubled down. Within hours, screenshots of her story were reposted all over Twitter and Reddit. Memes exploded. A trending hashtag emerged, #EvitaGate. People mocked her arrogance, her out-of-touch demands, and her complete inability to recognize the consequences of her own actions. And the worst part? She started reposting the memes. That's right, Rachel began ironically sharing edited videos and sarcastic tweets about herself as if trying to prove she was above it all. But the damage was already done. This wasn't someone laughing with the audience, it was someone laughing at them, all while asking them to buy a ticket. Theaters responded too. While they didn't publicly comment on the meltdown, some insiders revealed that additional discounts were being discussed behind closed doors. Management feared even more no-shows after the controversy. One source said, "We were hoping for a PR bump. Instead, we're getting refund requests." Rachel's fellow cast members reportedly weren't thrilled either. Behind the scenes, there were whispers of tension. Some performers were embarrassed by the attention. Others felt like they were being dragged into Rachel's personal circus. "We're here to put on a great show," one anonymous member said, "not to be part of a viral meltdown." And let's not forget the critics. While Rachel had originally hoped Evita would earn her critical redemption, the reviews that followed the Instagram fiasco were merciless. A talented voice overshadowed by a tone-deaf ego, one outlet wrote, "Zegler brings the vocals, but leaves the humility backstage." Another said, "The praise, what little there had been, evaporated overnight." In response, Rachel posted a cryptic quote to her Instagram story. "Sometimes the brightest stars shine too brightly for this world." And just like that, she proved once again that she hadn't learned a thing. She wasn't being blacklisted because she challenged norms. She wasn't being ignored because of her boldness. She was being phased out because she couldn't stop stepping on her own credibility. Even her management, reportedly exhausted, started pulling back. No more press tours, no new interviews, and the discussions about future roles canceled. Once again, Rachel had taken a platform meant to elevate her and used it to scold the very people she needed: her fans, theatergoers, the general public. And rather than rebuild her brand, she burned it again, all because people didn't show up. What she failed to realize is that support isn't owed, it's earned. And while the industry had given her every tool to succeed, she mistook entitlement for influence. She thought she could shame her way into ticket sales. Instead, she earned a reputation as the most unlikable performer on the West End. One publicist summed it up perfectly. You can't scold people into loving your work. You can't guilt them into clapping. People come because they feel inspired, not because they were told to. And as the Evita run limped toward its quiet conclusion, Rachel's Instagram activity noticeably slowed. Gone were the daily updates, gone were the reposts, gone were the rants. What was left? Silence. And not the peaceful kind. The kind that comes after everyone has left the room. By the end of the month, theaters began announcing shorter show runs. Ticketing sites quietly pulled her image from the banners. And just like that, the production faded into a footnote, just another chapter in the saga of a star who couldn't stop talking long enough to shine. Rachel Zegler didn't lose support because she was honest. She lost it because she made people feel small for not supporting her on her terms. She didn't get criticized for being bold. She got criticized for being entitled. And with every Instagram live, every angry story post, and every performative caption, she made the gap between herself and the public wider and wider. This wasn't about Evita. It was about ego. And when the curtains finally fell, no one was surprised. Because if there's one thing the audience won't tolerate, it's being told they're not doing enough by someone who refuses to do the work of humility. Rachel Zegler once had the world in the palm of her hand. Now she's just another example of what happens when stardom is treated like a spotlight for scolding instead of a stage for connection. And she did it to herself, one post at a time. After Rachel Zegler's now infamous Instagram outburst over her show Evita's underwhelming turnout, the dust didn't settle, it thickened. Instead of regrouping, apologizing, or reflecting, Rachel continued to spiral in ways that only deepened the public's frustration and solidified her place on Hollywood's do not engage list. What followed the Instagram Live wasn't just a PR disaster. It was a complete public unraveling of a celebrity who no longer understood the space she occupied. With each new post, Rachel made it clear she wasn't interested in salvaging her reputation. She was determined to prove she hadn't done anything wrong. And that's when the backlash evolved into something much more permanent: cultural disengagement. Within days of the meltdown, fans began canceling their plans to see Evita. TikTokers who had initially planned to vlog their experience at the show began uploading videos explaining why they were no longer attending. "I just can't support someone who talks to her fans like that," one user said in a now viral clip. "We're not the problem. Her attitude is." Instagram comment sections became war zones. On Rachel's own posts, former supporters began voicing their disappointment. "This is not the same person who cried during West Side Story," one user wrote. "That girl was grateful. This version of Rachel feels cold and disconnected." Another simply posted, "We were rooting for you." The shift in tone didn't stop with social media. Entertainment blogs and YouTube commentators jumped on the story, some calling it the biggest celebrity misfire of the season. They didn't just focus on the outburst itself, they highlighted the pattern of behavior. One video compilation titled "Rachel Zegler versus Her Own Audience" chronicled her history of clashing with fans, critics, and even her own co-stars. That video alone pulled in over 10 million views in a week. More concerning for Rachel, however, were the private reactions, particularly from within the industry. Casting agents, producers, and PR firms had been watching closely. What they saw wasn't just another celebrity meltdown. It was someone they couldn't trust to promote their projects, someone whose unpredictability now had financial consequences. One studio source, speaking anonymously to a major entertainment outlet, admitted, "She's officially a risk we can't afford." Rachel's team attempted damage control, but insiders reported that even her publicists were growing frustrated. Every time they suggested a quiet retraction or a more heartfelt statement, Rachel reportedly refused. "She thinks she's being brave," one source said, or she's burning every bridge she still has. Meanwhile, the Evita cast and crew were left to pick up the pieces. Attendance continued to drop. Even on weekends where shows normally peak, the seats were half empty. Theaters that had booked the show for extended runs began renegotiating. Some venues started offering group discounts to schools just to fill space. "We're trying everything," a staff member admitted. But the Rachel situation makes it difficult. It's not the show that's the problem, it's the shadow cast over it. Despite everything, Rachel continued to post. In one story, she shared a long paragraph about carrying the burden of being misunderstood. In another, she filmed herself walking past the theater with the caption, "Funny how people say they love theater but don't show up when it counts." The tone was bitter, the message was clear, she wasn't changing her approach. Worse still, she began engaging with negative comments, occasionally replying to criticism with sarcastic emojis or pointed remarks. It gave the impression that she wasn't rising above the chaos, she was leaning into it, and in doing so, she was transforming from a struggling star to a cultural punchline. Late-night talk shows started making jokes. One segment on a popular comedy show used her book a flight comment as the punchline for an entire sketch. "It's Evita, not the Super Bowl," the host quipped. Audiences laughed, but the underlying message was serious. Rachel was no longer a respected artist, she was a spectacle. And as Rachel's public image spiraled further, brands that had once partnered with her began quietly backing away. A fashion line that had included her in a promotional campaign quietly pulled her from the front page. A cosmetics company that had once sponsored her red carpet appearances stopped tagging her in their social media content. These moves weren't publicized, they were strategic disappearances. Even among fellow celebrities, support was drying up. Some stars unfollowed her on social media. Others began distancing themselves publicly. In interviews, when asked about controversial public figures, several actors made vague references that clearly pointed in Rachel's direction. One well-known stage performer commented, "There's a difference between confidence and condescension. When the audience feels like they're being blamed, something's gone wrong." All of this culminated in a final moment that many believe sealed her fate. Just before what was supposed to be one of the highest attended shows of her Evita run, Rachel posted a clip from rehearsal. It should have been uplifting. Instead, the caption read, "Tonight's your chance. Unless you're one of those people who supports from afar." It was a last straw for many. The next morning, Evita's social media team announced a new policy. All posts would now be approved by production before going live. It was an indirect but very clear message. The damage had become unmanageable. Critics took aim in their final reviews. Zegler's voice is strong, one wrote, but her relationship with the audience is fractured beyond repair. Another headline read, "Evita falls victim to its star's fragile ego." And perhaps the most brutal review came from a national paper. When theatergoers feel like the villain, they stop showing up, and Zegler has turned every audience into a scapegoat. When the final curtain call came weeks earlier than expected, Rachel gave an emotional farewell speech, but it wasn't a thank you to the audience, it was a defense of her actions. "I know I wasn't perfect," she said, "but I stood for something." The crowd gave polite applause, but the energy was muted. There were no standing ovations, no long cheers, just quiet nods and quick exits. Rachel walked off stage that night with tears in her eyes, but they weren't met with the usual chorus of love. Instead, the industry sighed collectively. It was over. Not just the show, but the idea of Rachel Zegler as a bankable, likable star. In the days that followed, she went silent. No posts, no live streams, no cryptic quotes. It was as if she'd finally realized the hole she had dug, only now there was no ladder left. Hollywood, which once cheered her arrival, had already moved on. Casting agencies stopped mentioning her. Streaming platforms quietly replaced her in early development deals. Award season came and went without a single nod. And the fan accounts? Deleted, abandoned, or rebranded. Rachel Zegler had become something the industry fears more than controversy, a reputation that can't be fixed. Not because of one mistake, not because of a scandal, but because of a consistent refusal to listen, to learn, and to let go of ego. Her downfall wasn't orchestrated by others. It was self-written, self-directed, and performed in full view of the world. And as the curtains closed for good, there were no flashing lights, no redemption arc, just silence. The very silence she once tried to fill with lectures, monologues, and guilt trips. The silence that follows when the audience has finally had enough.